So I can share my screen, correct?
Yes, please.
It says right now I'm disabled, so I can't.
That'll.
Sorry, if you can just give me one moment, I'll address that. My apologies.
Yeah, not a problem. And I think Brian, maybe while you're looking into that, I myself, on behalf of McSweeney Associates, want to say thank you to Vicki and your team for having us back. As she mentioned, the 2015-2016 exercise, it involved a lot of energy, a lot of input, a lot of people, and I think she framed it up properly. What we did with this next review, it was really to look at alignment, sort of what's changed, how are things aligned within, the directions of where the municipality wants to go. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Ideally, or I'm hoping that anything that we go through with the information that we've compiled, there shouldn't be any surprises for anyone. Some of the items that we're talking about, I don't want to use the word legacy, but they've been around for a while. And there's others that, it just shows the progression of where Sioux Lookout is headed. So that being said, that's sort of the flavor or the approach that we took to this exercise. And I can't stall anymore. Well, I can if you want me to.
Why don't you speak to the agenda items then, Ian, while Brian is trying to get a share screen.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
So what I want to do tonight, and I'm going to keep it brief and fairly high level. Ideally, I don't want to get down into the weeds if we don't have to, but I want to talk about literally why we're here, and I briefly mentioned it just a few moments ago. I'm going to give you a context as to why we did what we did. We're going to talk a little bit about why a strategic review, why it's important, talk about the process that we followed and the steps that we took to get this information to put it together. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the four main pieces that we looked at or put together. One of them being a socioeconomic profile. One of them was a detailed document review where we looked at 25 of your strategic documents. And the last two, we did a policy review with your corporate strategic plan, your updated official plan, and the 2016 economic strategy and growth plan. And finally, then we looked at essentially what were the top projects from an ECDEV perspective that occurred within the last 4 to 5 years.
You should be good now, Ian, to share your screen.
All right, let me give it a go. Perfect. So can everyone see the screen? It should say why we're here today. How's that? And the nods of head says it's working. Great. So I sort of skipped ahead. Just give me a sec here. So that's what I just talked about with the agenda. Again, the main objective is really to sort of outline some of the key things that we uncovered, and to sort of talk about next steps and some of the priority findings as well. So in terms of a starting point or setting some context, as Vicki mentioned, there was a very comprehensive exercise taken back in 2016. What we did with this, the process, or what the lens that we had on for this one is really looking at alignment. So where does the economic strategy fit in with the other documents? What are the main themes? What's really the topic of conversation that's happening around some of the other strategic initiatives, the priorities that are being identified, and other activities within Sioux Lookout? So I guess if we want to just take a step back, why would you want to do this strategic review? Why would you want to do a strategy in the first place even? And I guess it's really important to note that the notion of doing a strategic review is to continue building on that foundation that you already have. Sioux Lookout, I'll be very honest with you, is a very special place in the world. I think a lot of people know that already. You are unique in many ways, and you do have, and you are building an amazing community off of a strong foundation already. So what a strategic review does, it makes sure that you keep going in the right path. It also makes sure that, especially with this alignment exercise, that you're being very strategic with your resources, where you're going to put money, staff, your energy into things in the next 4 to 5 years. And finally, it's really about maintaining that momentum and making sure that you're still focusing on creating positive community change, which at the end of the day, that's what economic development, community development, that's what strategic planning is all about. You want to make sure that you are trying to, create that community the best you can. You want to make sure that in this case, you're looking at it through the eyes of a resilient and diversified economy. So that's really why, in a nutshell, you're doing this exercise. So in terms of the process that we followed, there was really 6 steps. So we took a look at your data, put together a very detailed socioeconomic profile. We went through a very exhaustive strategic document review, and I've got to say, you've got a lot of strategic documents. Very well thought out, very well positioned, but you've got all the right direction in terms of materials in place. Then we looked at sort of the accomplishments that have happened between the first growth plan and now. And we made some observations that we wanted to throw at you guys tonight. And we've sort of outlined some themes going forward as well. So that's the process that we went through. And I do have to pause. As you all know, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And I do have to thank Vicki and Lauren for their help in getting us through this. It was kind of challenging up front just to figure out what the heck we were going to do. Ideally, we would have done some of this on the ground, but that wasn't the case. So they were our eyes and ears on the ground, and it was fantastic. And they were very, they led this whole thing. So without them, we wouldn't have got it done. So I want to formally thank them on behalf of McSweeney Associates for helping us through this. So the first thing we did, we created a socioeconomic profile, which really, it's a big numbers exercise, and we try to tell a story through the numbers. And really the story that we pulled out of the numbers this time around doesn't really change from the last time we did this back in 2015, 2016, in the sense that you do have a young growing population. Your age segment between 15 and 45 is the fastest growing segment. For Northern Ontario community, that's amazing. That's almost unheard of. So that's nothing new. That's what was the same thing back in 2015, but you're still projecting that way, which is good. You definitely have a younger than Ontario average in terms of your ages. You're showing some growth, or your largest growth is in your technical and your knowledge-based skills. And I know this is something that some people like to debate back and forth, but you're definitely moving towards, if you're already there, a knowledge-based economy. The jobs that you have are professional, they're technical, they're based on skills. You're moving in the right direction, and you're growing that way, which is phenomenal. Some other things, housing is still an issue, and the numbers tell us that. So it's not in terms of affordability or the size, it's your stock or the number of houses that you have and the quality of the housing that you have. And finally, some things that jumped out of us as well. You do have some competitive advantages, and this shouldn't come as a surprise, but you've got the airport, which is a major piece of infrastructure for the services that you provide to the north. The schools, your educational services, your healthcare, and your accommodations. And it all sort of builds into that notion and your claim that you are the hub of the north. With all the different services that you provide, these are some of the key building blocks that you have and you continue to build on. And finally, you're showing growth in construction and utilities. And with some of the projects that are lined up in the near future, these are going to solidify as well to be continued growth sectors. From the doc perspective, so the strategic doc review that we did, and again, the key reason for us doing this review was to really line up all the documents and find out, okay, what are the similarities? Where are these documents tracking? What are the things that they all have in common that we can pull out and we can look at and say, okay, here are the common themes, or here are those strategic directions that keep coming up over and over again. So to do this, we looked at 25 of your key documents. The documents range from culture and tourism through to housing, recreation, some mining, your land use planning, your economic development, basically everything that Vicky could throw at us, we read. And we went through and we lined up what was important, and again, sort of where things align. So we had a lot of tables, a lot of graphs, all that stuff when we first started this, just to figure out how to tackle it. But in the end, what we found out was there's really 11 reoccurring themes. These themes may not come up in every document, but they came up a lot and repetitively over and over again. And these aren't in any specific order at all. They're just the themes that we grabbed. So there was tourism, infrastructure, transportation, logistics, community development, housing, workforce development, Indigenous engagement, having a diversified economy, environment, entrepreneurship, innovation, and again, Hub of the North. So I would hope that no one's surprised by this. And I'll be quite honest with you, being involved in the first round of doc reviews and consultations in 2015, 2016, it's nice to see that these things are still there. Because that was important back then, and nothing would dictate to us that you have to dramatically change. So these things were priorities then, they're priorities now, which is good to see. So the next step we did, we took your 3 main documents. So your official plan is basically doesn't matter how many strategies you put in place. Your official plan is your legal land use planning document. That's your guide. So we took that and we married it up against your corporate strategic plan and your 2016 growth plan and economic strategy. And what we came up with, basically, you shared the same themes or the same common themes or topics that we found in the original doc review, came up again over and over in these 3 main documents, which was good. But the other thing that came out quite a bit was around diversification. Whether it's diversification of the economy or diversification of your community, it was all about diversification, which was interesting to see as well. We weren't expecting that to come out, but that definitely came out in the themes and some of the topics that were being discussed. And then the last thing we did, we corralled Vicky and Lauren, and we went through an exercise to identify what really were the 20 most major projects. And I'll be totally honest with you, when Vicky handed us the list of about 60, we said, this is great, but we've got to pare them down. We've got to find out what are the main, or what are the main ones. And there is a lot. There has been a lot that's occurred. There's been a lot that's happened, which is fantastic, and I'll explain more of that in a minute. But again, the main projects that occurred really fell under 4 pillars, and it was about community development, community engagement, regional competitiveness, or how you're dealing with some of the advantages that you have and using that to your advantage, and infrastructure challenges. So those are really the 4 topics that jumped out there. And I guess I'll jump to the next slide. I want to spend a bit of time just talking about what we've uncovered in a nutshell. So there has been a lot that's happened since 2015, 2016. But it's been a lot of good things. When we do work in Northern Ontario communities, a lot of them are struggling. A lot of them are having issues when it comes to making sure that their demographic profile is sustainable. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of aging communities out there. There's a lot of communities where they're dealing with aging infrastructure because they're lacking the residential and the commercial tax base and the growth that they need to fund community development pieces. You've got a lot going on. You've got a lot of activity. You've got a lot of energy. And that's a good thing, because as soon as the community starts slowing down and it looks like there's not a lot going on, it usually means there's not a lot going on. But that's not the case. There's a lot going on in Sioux Lookout. And that's a good thing. the other part, and you know, in explaining this to Lauren and Vicky, you need to celebrate this. This is a good news story. What's happened? Well, what's continually been happening within Sioux Lookout is that you are definitely being the hub of the North, as you say you are. You're supporting other communities surrounding you. You're building your infrastructure to make sure that you can continue to do that. You're building partnerships and relationships with your neighbors and your neighboring communities, which is huge. And in today's day and age, when you know, it's very important to think regionally, and it's very important to support your neighbors, you're doing it. And you're working together, which is fantastic. You've got a young, active, growing population. You're making more than the Ontario average from a salary perspective. You know, there are things from an economic development point of view you're doing completely right. You're not a typical Northern Ontario town that's stuck trying to find your way through, you know, making sure that the traditional industries come back. You've grown past that, and you're evolving now into, as I said earlier, a community that's focused on more your knowledge-based economy items, whether it's healthcare, education, services, even some tourist stuff. You're moving in the right direction, which is phenomenal. But that said, success also comes with some challenges, and this is going to be the hard part. Sorry, Brian, I just know I should look really quick. There are challenges here. The part that's going to be difficult, as you evolve, there's going to be a need, and there's already a need for some basic infrastructure pieces: land, service land, appropriate housing. Those things, that's not going to change. That's still going to be one of those, or some of those things that you're going to have to grapple with. But you're also going to have to continue maintaining that level of service that you have. So you do have excellent infrastructure to claim that you're the hub of the North, but you have to maintain that infrastructure, maintain those services, maintain what you have, and keep doing what you're doing and building off of that. So those are going to be the challenges going forward. So really, some of the themes or the observations that we've pulled out, or that we see, you know, it really is about people and places. That's really what it comes down to. Right now, from a people perspective, you've got that demographic profile that really supports what you're trying to do. But you've got to continue evolving as a community to make sure that you're attracting the right people and retaining the right people. And a lot of that comes with some base infrastructure stuff. I just want to pause for a second. I always enjoy reading the bulletin. I love looking at the newspaper. I love looking to see what's going on. And one of the first things I go to see how energetic or how active a community is your sports page. And when I flip through your sports page and I see all the activities that youth have and the teams that are there, I was amazed. And I know there's a global pandemic, so that may change a little bit in the near future, but you've got an active community. And it's all about people. And, you know, you can almost stop right there. If you take the people equation out of your community, or if you change that demographic profile, it completely changes the look and feel of the community. If you were older, if you were uneducated, if you didn't have the support system for the people that live there, you wouldn't be Sioux Lookout. You'd be a totally different place. But you do have a young population. You do have an educated population. You're growing in the right direction. So going forward, a way to think about this is how to make sure that we can attract the right people that we want and maintain that trajectory that we have. And a way to do that is around looking at the places part of Sioux Lookout. Do you have the right pieces of community infrastructure in place going forward? Do you have the proper housing stock? Do you have enough houses? Do you have the quality of houses? Do you have, you know, that downtown that's welcoming and inviting? Do you have land? Do you have service land? Do you have land where you can start a new business, build a new building? Do you have vacancy rates in downtown? where you can put a new business. This is all about, I'm laughing at Brian again. So I can only see 3 people on my screen, just so you know that, and Brian's one of them. So I'm reacting whatever Brian does here. But that's a way to think about this going forward. So what you do in terms of your economic development and how you build Sioux Lookout as a place is really going to determine the types of people that you retain and the types of people you attract. And they go hand in hand. So some of the things or some of the topics that came up, you know, housing and accommodations, that's going to be something you'll need to think about moving forward. Land and building development. And these are bricks and mortar infrastructure stuff. Broadband. And, you know, if you look around what's happening in rural Canada these days, when we were all told to go home and start working from home, a lot of communities realized, holy crap, people can't work from home because they don't have the proper broadband. And I'll be honest, I live in the south end of Ottawa. I'm not really rural where I live. I work everywhere else, but I live not too far from downtown Ottawa. And there's a mad rush right now where I am to put fiber in the ground because there's not enough bandwidth. It's the same in rural everywhere. You need bandwidth. And when we start coming out of this pandemic, people are going to see that there's a new way of doing business. And a lot of it's more remote. So that's a piece of infrastructure you really need to think, sorry, I'm mumbling here. That's really a piece of infrastructure you need to think seriously about. That's a tongue twister, by the way. Your regional workforce and your workforce development. You know, you're building your community around some pretty amazing pieces of infrastructure, but you need people to work in those pieces of infrastructure, whether it's the education system, the healthcare system, whatever it be. You need people to physically be there. And if you're looking to expand on those, if you're looking to add in some seniors facilities or anything like that, you're going to have to think, how do we staff it? And it's all about workforce development. That goes back to people. And then finally, I think the one thing you want to make sure that you continue doing is, you know, building on and solidifying your claim that Sioux Lookout is the hub of the North. It's as simple as that. You keep doing what you're doing because you're doing fantastic. There's things that you can tweak and things that you can change. But, you know, you have to keep doing what you're doing. You can't slow down. You can't take your foot off the pedal. You got to keep moving forward. There's another piece in here that I haven't mentioned yet, and I'm sort of tiptoeing around it because I'm not quite sure how to address it. Tourism came up over and over again as well. And that's another thing that if you want to get into the tourism game, you're going to have to put some skin in the game and invest into it. It's the same as any other sector or any other piece of infrastructure where you're going to have to do something with it. But it's a decision that you'll have to make going forward. So in terms of next steps, everything I've talked about today, all the reports, everything we've done, and Vicky, I'm going to look at you to nod if I think I'm right here, but it's all online or going online so that people can access all the reports. We do have a survey that's now live, and people can access that, and there's the web. And then the next step, the economic development team with myself, we're going to be looking at, you know, some of the priorities going forward from here on in.
Just to add that the survey, the documents have been up and there's been notices in the paper for the last month, and the documents have been up for 3 weeks, and they will remain up until further notice. But the deadline for the survey and feedback is next Friday, November the 19th. We're using SurveyMonkey so that we can speed up the results so we can share with the community. And then our next steps will be to, as Ian has indicated, to prepare a go forward 2020-2025 economic development priority in aligned with the guiding principle policy documents. I do want to say though, in these during this review, in these documents, there were clear gaps and barriers along the different policy documents. We need to go back and amend those documents moving forward, and we will make those recommendations Without those information and all three aligning, all levels of government are holding us to the fire. I'll give an example that we just recently had an application in to upgrade our booster station at the airport. We were advised we could not be funded because it wasn't identified in our asset management plan and other strategic documents. Fortunately enough, we dug deep in and it was in there. And upon providing that information, they reversed their decision and approved us. That's a multi-million-dollar project. And I think it's really important that the community and our leadership understands that this review is going to even take us closer to meeting the goals and objectives that we've all set forward, but married as one. And so I want to thank everybody for participating in this process. The documents are very detailed. I hope everyone's had an opportunity. Any questions moving forward, we'd be happy to help in addressing through Brian. Brian also takes a lot of the questions. Brian has been very helpful in reviewing the documents in depth. And I want to thank him as well for his participation in this process. You, Mayor Lawrence, I'll go back to you.
Well, thank you very much. Vicky, it's not clear to me, are you opening this up for questions from council?
Council first, then we have some members of our Economic Development Commission, and also we have 8 attendees.
Okay, so we're open
Start
for
with council.
All right, council comments, questions, and can you speak up? I can't see everybody on the screen, so I...
State your name and your question, just so we know for sure.
I'll go through the council. I'll just make it a bit easier. Councillor Bath.
I don't think I have any extra questions. I've gone through the report and looked at it, and it's definitely very detailed and very comprehensive. So I think I'd like a little more time to look at it, and I'll keep on looking at what's in there. Some things I agree with, some things I don't agree with, and I want to look at them a little more thoroughly before I comment on it.
Thank you. Councillor Timpson. Councillor Timpson, unmute. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to actually have a hard copy of the report. It's fairly long and it's difficult to read it that long online. But anyway, Michelle, maybe I'll just send a note to Tiffany tomorrow on that. I just wanted to make one comment that I think with so much moving forward with, the flora of jobs that are here and the new industries and so on, and the push towards housing, my fear is that the downtown part of Sioux Lookout, not just the downtown, but the urban Sioux Lookout, is becoming more and more a community of apartments and duplexes of people living there temporarily. And that we don't want to become just a municipality that is just a bunch of renters who are coming here for a couple of years to get, to get experience and move on. But we have to maintain that whole sense of community and keep residential areas vibrant. And I think I just see the danger that we're going to be, we're not going to be a community any longer if we don't have people here permanently and houses for them to buy so they can stay permanent. And with that has to be a balance with, you've got to have really interesting things for people to do to stay here. They've got to have a decent place to live. They're going to have their job, but they've got to have a decent place to live that they can call home, and interesting things to do. And so the focus on the recreation side, the stuff to do after work, the library, the Cedar Bay, the wilderness, the skiing, and that sort of thing. And I think that needs to really be thought about and I guess parsed out in a report and in our thinking about what economic development is. So that's economic development, what economic development is in this particular community. So those are my comments. I didn't have any particular questions, but those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fenelon.
It's a good document. I read most of it, but I haven't gotten through it all. And what they're talking about here tonight is, I believe, is that we're trying, I don't know how we're going to do it all to align everything up to whatever industries and businesses that are going to be coming to Sunakot. And I don't know how we're going to pick all the avenues to move forward at this time. That's it for me right now.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, I think it was good reports. There's a lot of good detailed information in there, which is nice. A couple of questions with our top 20 projects. So we just kind of have a list. Just maybe a suggestion for people that do view this outside. It could be almost maybe look at putting it as some of the stuff that's completed, some of the stuff that's kind of ongoing or in the works, and then the stuff that's on the future, like still kind of concept phase. That will kind of show where we're at with all those projects. The guiding policy documents, the comparison chart, some of the text in red, I didn't catch why that is.
Just give me 1 sec. I'm just going to.
It aligns with the themes, I believe, Joe. So the title is the themes
so
are different. So they align with the themes. And also, Joe,
so safety.
as I agree with your comment on showing what's completed and not completed. And like we say, like I provided him with a list of 60 different projects over the period. So, but that's I've noted it for you.
Okay. No, that was good. That was just kind of one thing that kind of came up there. With their socioeconomic profile, I see we compare a lot to Ontario with regards to cost of living, housing, and stuff, which is okay. But I'm worried. I don't know how much gets when we look at Ontario. The bulk of Ontario, population-wise, housing-wise, is in Southern Ontario, where there's housing markets are crazy. And I'm worried that that kind of comparison might get washed a little bit with regards to actually how Sioux Lookout is situated within our region. I know in I think it was section 3 we referenced that like Sioux Lookout's in our economic region and comparing it in our economic region. I'm wondering with some of those other those other charts and stuff, if there's a way to tease out some of how we compare to other like within our region more, as opposed to just Ontario in general.
So we, through you, Mayor Lawrence, we can tease out different pieces of information. Quite honestly though, we use Ontario as the base. We hear the same thing everywhere we go, that Toronto's skewing everything or Southern Ontario skewing everything. Looking at it in a bigger picture, you may think you're competing against the Kenoras, the Drydens, the Northern Ontario, but you're not. You're actually competing against many other jurisdictions in Ontario for talent. So when it comes to looking at things like housing, cost of housing, cost of living, that kind of stuff, you are looking at it from an Ontario perspective. But that said, we've exhausted, I think, what we can do in terms of our data dig this time around, but we can talk to Vicky. We can get you data for any region, any area, any town you want and compare. But if there comes a point, Councillor, when the information is good to have, but it's going to almost paint you the same picture. And there's some, but your points are completely valid. It's just for us, we use the baseline of Ontario because normally back in the day when economic development was more localized, more regionalized, we had more comparators in there to other communities, either the same size or communities within the same region. But we're noticing now that like people are coming from everywhere. In fact, if I look at where some of you came from, I did sneak a look at some of your bios, by the way, before the meeting, just so I knew who I was going to be talking to. A lot of you came from Southern Ontario, different places as well, right? And you just found your way up to Sioux Lookout. It's very interesting to see how people move around these days. And it's more of an Ontario context as opposed to before when it was very Ontario Central and Southern, or sorry, Northern, Central and Southern. It's really changed how people move around. But I can talk to Vicky and see.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I can, and Michelle may be able to assist Joe, most of the people that are applying for municipal jobs, as well as all the jobs, we are now working very closely with Slifna, Meneowan, and other organizations. The talent is not coming from the region. It's coming from Southern Ontario or further away. And so, as Joyce said, the fabric of your community, our fabric, what we said, people in place, if we don't get the people here and we stop providing the services and the knowledge-based economy that we have to celebrate, it will collapse. So, we're trying always to address that. But that I just wanted to put that on the record, maybe Michelle could add. And that's where we're all running into difficulty. It's not that they don't want to come, they want to be there tomorrow, they just can't live.
No, that's fair. That's good. Thank you. We can chat more about that too, Vicky, after. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Howie.
Yeah, thank you, Ian, for putting this all together. And I think you did highlight some important areas. One being land and development. I think that is something that is needed in this town. And I think another area is recreation and leisure. Of course, Joyce, she's very active in the Cedar Bay community and skiing, and it's great. And Sioux Lookout definitely has that as an asset in its war chest when it comes to recruiting and trying to retain people. Another thing is leisure, and people come here and they need to do something to relax. Our beaches are beautiful, our lakes are beautiful. So tourism was another huge asset of our community. So I just want to say we should really capitalize on that and focus on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lego, and I hope you have been able to join us.
Yes, sir. Apologize. Some technical difficulties with the iPad that I had. I had to get my personal computer out and log on, so it took a bit longer. Again, I'd just like to reiterate what Councillor Cassidy was saying about the 20 projects. I believe Vicky said that it was closer to 60 projects, that not only for us, but for the municipality as a whole, to see what's complete, what's not complete, what's still future plans. I think that's important for all of us to have a grasp of what's going on. The main issue I took out of all of this was housing, and more housing. We have multiple jobs available, over 700 jobs I see available. We just don't have the people, and we can't seem to be retain the people because we don't have the housing for them to move into. So that hopefully should be a focus of council over the next couple of years and then into the future. Those things seriously need to be tackled. And hopefully we can, I know that it's always been a plan of the municipality. We're so many units away, but we always seem to be moving backwards, and it's hard to retain people and get people to come here. As the CAO even knows, when she moved here, it was hard to find accommodations. What else was there? As again, Councillor Cassidy was saying, the cost of building in Sioux Lookout is, and probably in Northwest Ontario, is quite a bit different than what it is in Southern Ontario. So those factors need to be taken into consideration. And again, what Councillor Howie was saying, the Crown land that is around Sioux Lookout, getting that switched over to municipal land and service municipal land. That's extremely important in my opinion as well. So those are the main things that I've taken out of the, and there was a lot of reports, a lot of good reports. So thank you for putting that together for us. It's appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Before and for the next segment, after my comments, Brian, Clerk, maybe you could coordinate the input and the questions. I think it may be easier for you. Is that fair? Thank you. So I really appreciate the positivity that was put forward in the presentation this evening. You're a good salesman for Sioux Lookout. I'd like to get you out there working for us on the road. So really appreciate that. And some of the facts in the study, I think that you've brought out, that we're younger, our salaries are higher, etc. This is all, as you framed it, is good news. There's challenges. But I think the challenges are positive challenges. They're not negative challenges. The inverse would be, we've got houses sitting empty. The value of our assets is going down. We're in a good position, not a bad position. I would, I guess, I think the cost of construction and the cost of housing, sorry, and this will be forever my opinion, is a red herring. If we weren't successful, then the cost of housing would be a lot less, because the supply would far exceed the demand. Do you expect that construction would cost more or less here in Sioux Lookout than it would in Ottawa or Sault Ste. Marie or Thunder Bay? More. Do the materials cost more here? The piece of pipe we put in the ground costs more here because it's got to get here. And so construction is higher. But I don't think that the costs, to my mind, are. I think that using the Ontario average, as you outlined and reasoned out for us, that we talk about Ontario, we're competing with Ontario, all of Ontario, not with Dryden or other places. And Dryden, you know, I pick our next closest community, which we in fact support with jobs, and they support us by providing Walmart and Canadian Tire, and we go down there and support them by shopping there. But if the mining that's being discussed, that's very proximate to Dryden, comes through, their problem is that their average age is, I believe, 8 or 9 years older than our median age is. But they're very much a retirement community, or a community that's moved on. They'll have trouble attracting workers, just as we do, and their price of housing will no longer be the incentive to stay in Dryden and commute to Sioux Lookout, because the cost of housing in Dryden will start to go up quite suddenly if the mining that's happening within 30 kilometers of Dryden happens. So I just think we're in an excellent position, lots of opportunity, lots of challenges that we have to meet, but they're positive challenges, I would say. And you framed it that way, and thank you very much. Mr. Clerk, I'm going to let you, I think you're the appropriate one. I'm not sure who has the controls here to take the input and comments in the next segment here.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. For those who are attending in the webinar room, if you do have any comments or questions that you wish to share, you may do so now. You can just use the chat feature. We can do it that way. Is probably the easiest.
Hi, Brian. I believe that's how it was set up. Lauren May had indicated to me that it would be done through a chat process. Mm-hmm. So you'll read the chat, eh?
Yeah. So, okay, here we go. So this is, just make sure this is the first one. Okay, great. So from Alan Lee, he states one element that I believe needs to be considered relates to the growing number of skilled foreign workers coming to our community. While I cannot speak to the health authority, this is the growing demographic at Minoyawan, especially amongst our regulated professionals, with emphasis being placed on this through various government programs. And as we look to our workforce planning at the hospital, this is an important element.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, if we could comment that we just, for Alan, that we just recently met with the Member of Parliament this week, specifically on the demographic and the change in attracting immigration, and working with colleagues in the community that have been instrumental in attracting upwards of 16 new community members.
Thanks, Vicki. Good comment from Alan, and we're certainly very much aware of it. It's changing as we speak, almost increasing so quickly. The participation of let's say immigrant population in our workforce, which is wonderful to see. I'm leaving it to you, Mr. Clerk. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Lawrence. Yes, I'm just awaiting other comments.
Maybe I can make a comment here through you, Mayor Lawrence. It is 6:23. Do you want to give it a period of time for feedback? Or if we don't see any, oh, we have Joyce pointing, Doug.
Sure. Maybe I'll go around the council table one quick go around again, and Brian, let us know if there's chat. That'll give people a chance to either think about putting a chat on, or and if they haven't, then we'll move on after one more round to council table. So, Councillor Bath, anything further?
Yeah, just one little thing. I want to make sure it was sort of a comment to answer what some of the things that Joyce had mentioned about rentals and housing. It's a great idea that everybody should move into a house. I think that's wonderful if we had that. We don't have that. And if we can get people to stay here by having rental properties, I think we shouldn't be trying to discourage that. So it's important that we don't put the word out to get the word on the street, so to speak, that we really aren't too interested in doing that. Right now, there's some pretty busy folks building in towns for rentals, and I don't think we want to discourage that. That's the first step to living here is living in a rental accommodation. And when we look at the report, the cost of living in a rental was identical to the cost of owning, which is pretty interesting, actually. So I think we want to make sure that's not where we go. I don't disagree that we want people to have homes and a home in a neighborhood, but the fact is we need to get them to stay here first, and they aren't going to stay here if there's that we're discouraging people from building rental properties.
Thank you, Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, no, I don't think by any means we're discouraging building rental properties. I'm just thinking we have to think about how we balance it all out. And it could be as simple as trying to spread the rental properties out a little bit more in the community. At any rate, that aside, I just wanted to follow up on what Alan had said about foreign workers at the hospital. But I think there's a great increase in foreign workers in the food industry and the unskilled, unregulated job market here. Tim Hortons is almost all, and I don't know, immigrants from India and the East, South Asia. I don't know whether they're on a foreign workers program or whether they're landed immigrants. Same with Subway, and so we're going to have to consider new demographic of our town in terms of things like race relations. We might have to instigate a race relations committee yet again, because we're going to be 3 different demographics here: Indigenous, non-Indigenous, and then immigrants. And I think these are all things that are important to the success of the economy, is accommodating to the reality of the demographics we have. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting comment from Alan. I hadn't thought of it, and then I realized that basically most of our food and hotel industries now are being staffed by immigrants or foreign workers.
Thank you, Councillor Timpson. Councillor Fenelon.
No, I don't have too much to say about it there. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Councillor Howie.
I agree with what Councillor Timpson said, and I don't think we want to discourage people from renting, but I think we also want to promote people that are renting to buy homes and anchor themselves more permanently in the community. I think that is the first step. We don't want to encourage people to rent forever, and I'm going to say hold that spot for someone new to the community coming in, just got a job and needs to be here in a few weeks, because we don't have many homes that are available to purchase right away. We see that many homes that are listed are bought right away and usually well over asking price. And in line with what Councillor Lego also said, is opening up that crown land so people that are in the community that own a smaller home can move rurally. So I just want to, again, stress that as an important asset of our community.
Thank you. Councillor Lego.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would like to add is that the municipality can be the facilitator between all the different agencies to figure out our housing issue. And like Mayor Lawrence said at the Monday meeting that we're in, things start at the grassroots here. We work our way up, and if we have enough people behind us, we can get things done. So I appreciated that comment when you made that on Monday at the meeting there. So I believe in that wholeheartedly.
Thanks, Councillor Cassidy. Yeah, just reflecting on renting, when I look at my screen, I see 4 councillors, and I'm pretty sure that 3 of the 4, Councillor Fenelon, you're from here, I'm not sure your situation. When I moved here, I rented. I moved here for a job in engineering and rented for a year. When I bought my first home, I had tried to buy a home to move my family here, and couldn't, and I didn't pay above the asking price, but I paid the asking price, made the offer sight unseen after it was described to me. But that's 35 years ago. I'm not saying that's a good thing. It's just that we've always been in this situation, and maybe it's being exacerbated now. And I heard from others that they moved here 10 years before I did, and 10 years after, and it's been a similar situation. So I agree with all we need more rental situations. We need more housing. We need, not everybody will stay. At the engineering company, we offer jobs to many, and many came, and many left, many stayed. And they came, when they first came, they rented, and the ones who stayed eventually bought houses. It's not for everybody, and I don't think that I don't think it should be a huge concern. I think any growing municipality will be going through a similar situation with growth, and especially one that, such as ours, uniquely located in a rather remote part of the province. People aren't going to come here from the south and typically put down their stake right away in something that's so alien to them. But fortunately, so many do, and here we are in a good position. Brian, anything on the chat line?
Through Mayor Lawrence, yes. A couple of more comments. One from Christine Hoey. She said, just wondering if we can make sure there is some focus on the revitalization of the downtown core, specifically the older buildings and any that aren't being used. Also, a comment from Audrey and Alan Brandeis saying, thank you for the informative session. We will review and respond with our input regarding housing and land development. And Alan Lee also the mayor's comments resonated well with him. He said, still renting 2.5 years in. So he shared that with us as well. So those are the comments to date.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, I don't want to speak for Alan. Alan's quite a lot younger than I am. There is considerable, and more, we think of it more in the larger urban centers, a move in younger people not to be quite so thrilled with the concept of home ownership as we were when, certainly my generation, all right, I turned 70 2 days ago, it was years ago. I think that there's a considerable move away from that. That's not quite the end all and be all it used to be. So, Councillor Timpson.
Yeah, I think that's probably quite true, and out of the reach of so many people. But I think that the key here is retention of people, whether they're renting or buying. I suppose doesn't matter, but retention in a knowledge economy, that is critical, more than a technical or type of economy, where the knowledge and I'm speaking in terms of my own self, who's been in the health and the social services and the mental health industry here, that the lack of continuity in people has held back so many programs, and because there's no corporate memory, there's no memory of what's gone on, and because people come and go for 2 years and then leave. So I think it's the retention of people that is key here in a knowledge economy as opposed to another type of economy. So.
Thank you. Vicky, anything to close off here? Unless clerk, anything? Okay, Vicky, anything?
I don't see any more either. Yeah, through you, Mayor Lawrence, I want to thank you for participating. It was a very interesting process. It was a real lesson in learning. But I want to say it really has given us a clear lens to go forward. And a lot of the comments that have been made, we're already addressing or well into making great things happen. So we'll be excited to do that report like Joe. I was going to give Corey Joe's kudos, but Joe, I will definitely, that will be part of the process. And as you see the go forward, it will be scaled on what will be done in the first year, what can be finished in the second, third, fourth, fifth. And I think that will shake out those projects that we have. I have worked for this the municipal administration through 3 councils now, and I can tell you that this is a very focused administration, and it makes it really good to work with such a strong team that can move projects of this need and magnitude. Ian Duff, to your partners and and the work that we did, and it wasn't always easy. We didn't always agree. But we did make it through to the other side, and to Lauren for her overachieving and efforts in such a new position. I'd like to thank you. Thank you to the Economic Development Commission and those that participated tonight, to the public. We look forward to continued communications. Please fill out the feedback. We'd greatly appreciate it. Ian, I'll turn it over to you, and then that's all I have today, Mayor Lawrence.
Thank you. Ian, anything final?
No. I appreciate listening to the discussion, to be totally honest with you. Especially when it comes around topics like housing, types of housing, attracting new people to the community, diversifying the community. the different types. Well, the whole concept of, leisure. My background's in leisure, believe it or not. So listening to those types of topics come up. Housing isn't just building housing. It's about attracting people. And that comes with a whole lot of other parts to talk about. So again, back to echo Mayor Lawrence, what you mentioned earlier, this is a good problem to have. And we enjoy working with Sioux Lookout, and Vicki, we never disagree. We always just talk more, that's all. Anyway, we enjoyed it. Thanks for having us back, and I look forward to the next step. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ian. And I guess before I must have taken a wrong turn somewhere in my life, because my background's in work and your background's in leisure. Well, geez, how do you manage that? I just reiterate the thank yous that Vicki has made to staff and the Economic Development Commission and to Ian. And on behalf of council, I'll say thanks very much. Very, very informative, and looking forward to the next steps. So I think with that, we can, thanks to everybody for participating on the different media platforms here. And Mr. Clerk, we're ready for a motion to a confirmatory bylaw. Thank you. That the bylaw number 8320, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the municipality of Sioux Lookout November 12th special council meeting, be read first, second, and third time and passed. Moved by Councillor Fenelon, second by Councillor Cassidy. All in favor? Carried. And motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Howie, seconded by Councillor Lego. All in favor? Good night, everybody. Thank you very much again. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.